What's up, y'all? Today we've got another bundle of sponsored questions, so we're going to run through these, but this time these are all anime friendly. So as long as you've seen through season 2, there will be no spoilers here. So first up today, we got a question from Rob, and Rob actually sent me his question in DMs because there wasn't enough space to put it here. So for anybody else that's run into that same problem, feel free to do the same thing. Just toss me your username in this message so I make sure I'm responding to the right person. So Rob had two questions, and the first was, knowing what you know now, would you still have chosen to read the manga ahead of watching the anime? And for me personally, yes. I really enjoy reading manga. I mean, you guys have seen my videos. You know I love to like deep dive and analyze and put theories together, right? So the source material when doing stuff like that is always the best, right? You know, going straight to like the author's version. And that's not to say that JJK's anime, changes a bunch of things. It doesn't. The JJK anime is a fantastic adaptation. There are some changes, but it's not really changes to canon. It's just like enhancements, like making fights that were maybe only a few panels in the manga into like way cooler experiences in the anime. But anyway, so I would keep with the manga because I enjoy reading manga. And again, I like just it being the source material. It's the best place to like draw examples and analysis and conclusions from, right? But that being said, the anime is gorgeous, and it's definitely a way a lot of people consume these stories. So I don't knock that at all. I started as an anime only in my anime manga journey and eventually became a manga reader, right? Which I think that's the journey for a lot of people. But Rob's second question is, if you had a friend who you were going to introduce them to JJK, what would you do? Show them the manga, the anime, or both? And y'all can feel free to pause and read the rest. But it would depend, really, right? It depends on the type of friend. Like, if there's somebody that isn't really an anime watcher, which means they're definitely not a manga reader, and you're just trying to show them JJK because it's so good and you want to introduce them to these types of shows, then definitely start with the anime. I feel like it's much easier to digest for somebody that's not familiar with these types of things. Because the translations in manga can be really rough sometimes, like even official translations. So if you don't like know what you're getting into, it can be a hard experience to initially get used to, not to mention reading the opposite way around, right? So I would definitely recommend the anime to somebody who's just completely green. Now, if you're introducing it to somebody who is like familiar with anime, reads manga, then I would just say both, whatever they prefer. I think both hold up really well, and if anybody's willing to give it a fair shot, I believe they'll enjoy JJK. Next up, we've got a question from Aaron, and Aaron did the same thing by shooting me the question in the DMs, so let's swap over there. Aaron basically wanted to know what that attack was that Akotsu and Rika used at the end of the JJK Zero movie, and if, since Yuta and Gojo are related, could it have at all been related to Hollow Purple, even just like stylistically. So that attack was essentially just a powerful beam of energy. Like, think of a Kamehameha wave, honestly, because you got to remember that it was going up against Geto, who was using Uzumaki, which is a powerful beam of energy. So I think it was just, a way to make that clash interesting, one beam versus another beam, right? And you got to remember that JJK Zero was a one-shot, right? It was written first before Jujutsu Kaisen, and it was intended to just be that story, self-contained, but it was so popular that Gege then made Jujutsu Kaisen as we know it today. So there wasn't too much, there was absolutely world building, but it wasn't as deep as it is now. So I think that's why that attack was just very simple. There were no domain expansions in JJK Zero. So really just a powerful beam. And the way he did that beam was by making a binding vow with Rika, essentially giving her his entire future and his love, right? Basically saying, like, I'm willing to go out after this attack as long as we can just put everything we've got into it. Next up, we got a question from Kyle, who wants to know, why didn't Mei Mei need the flashlight in the season 2 premiere? So for those that don't recall, there's a flashlight when they're in the haunted house, and she tosses it to Urahime saying that, like, you need this, right? I don't. So the first part of this answer is that that moment's not canon. So in the original manga, that haunted house sequence is only like 4 pages long, and they really fleshed that out in the anime. And I liked the way they fleshed it out in the anime. But all that to say is there's not a canon answer for this because that didn't even happen, right? Now I can give you my best guess, and that is just that Mei Mei is built different. She's much stronger than Urahime, so maybe that was just signifying her strength in that moment. But also, you got to remember that her curse technique she can utilize crows, right? And she can actually see what crows see. So my best guess is just that she was going to be using her curse technique and her crows to help her search the house. And so for that reason, she didn't need a flashlight personally. Next, we've got another question from Kyle who wanted to know, why didn't Todo's simple domain work against Mahito's domain expansion? And if you recall, the sequence of events as they play out are described like this. Todo opens the simple domain, but Yuji is even faster than that, rushing towards Mahito. And Mahito is even faster than Yuji, opening his domain expansion. So Todo simply wasn't fast enough. Mahito got that 0.2-second domain expansion off, affecting Todo's soul before he could open the simple domain. Also, Kyle, I know you had one other question, but I'm going to do that in another video. Next up, we got a question from Gino who says, I know why Choso thinks Yuji is his brother, but why does Todo? And I kid you not, Todo's just an idiot, and that's the best answer we have right now. We know for a fact, because Gege himself said it, that the reason Choso thinks Yuji is his brother and the reason Todo does are completely unrelated. So there's nothing that you can draw as connective tissue between those two. And I won't say more than that because we're not getting into spoilers here. But the genuine answer seems to be that Todo is just an idiot, and he just, had those false memories because he likes Yuji so much. Next up, we've got two questions from Nate, and I'm going to answer these at the same time because they kind of go together. The first one is, who defeated Sukuna 1,000 years ago? And the second is, how was he separated into the 20 fingers? Well, to begin with, he was never defeated. That's a misconception. A lot of people went up against Sukuna back in the Heian era, but he was never defeated. So he ultimately decided to split himself into the 20 fingers to become a cursed object to traverse time so that, maybe one day down the road he could fight some stronger opponents. Next up, Dylan asks, why does Sukuna have two weirder eyes on the right side of his face? Great question. We still don't know. This is one of the more interesting mysteries still left uncovered in Jujutsu Kaisen. A lot of people think it's because he's a curse, right? He's got 4 eyes, 4 arms, 2 mouths. He's a curse. You don't need to explain why. But Sukuna is not a curse. That's a big misconception. Sukuna was a human who became a cursed object into the 20 fingers, like we were just talking about. And I talk a little bit more about this and the whole 20 finger thing in a video called The King of Curses is Not a Curse. So it's not really any new information, but check that out for a more in-depth explanation. But yeah, we still don't really know. There's a lot of theories about this, but unfortunately, I don't have a concrete answer for you yet. And while we're on the subject, shout out to Rico for the next question, which is, what is my take on Sukuna and his brother theory? So this is one of the theories that could explain why Sukuna is messed up in all of those ways. And it's because he's a twin that ate or consumed his twin brother. And that's why he's got the 4 arms, the 2 mouths. The weird face thing still doesn't fully make sense, but hey, we could chalk it up to he ate his brother, right? And this really stems around the fact that Sukuna is like a real life, myth? I don't know if that's the right word. Myth, fable, from Japan. So I might make a more in-depth video explaining that original myth and stuff and the inspiration Gege took from that. But yeah, at this point, we still don't really know, right? So this at best is a theory, but it's a very interesting one, and I think it does make a lot of sense. So definitely check out the real life Sukuna to shed some more light on this. And like I said, I might make a video myself on it at some point. Finally, we've got a question from A who wants to know, could you touch Gojo if you used a simple domain? And if you just used like a regular vanilla simple domain, no. But if you use domain amplification, which is kind of like an evolution of the simple domain, then yes. This is what Jogo and Hanami used down in the train station of Shibuya to touch Gojo. Now, they still never did because Gojo is just built different and that much stronger than them. But theoretically, if they could have gotten through, then they would have hit Gojo with domain amplification. Also, I've got videos going in depth explaining domain amplification, simple domain, hollow wicker basket, all that jazz. So look that up for a more thorough explanation. And the best way to find those is usually on YouTube. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you all so much for the support. It really does mean more than you know. And I'll see you guys in the next one.